love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same. Never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same. Will never be the same ever again.
And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello and welcome to another SDA Q&A. Good to have you all here. And it's good to see many of you in the chat. Please offer up your thoughts as I go along. And if you have a few dollars spare and you'd like to support what I'm doing, then you can throw a couple of dollars my way in PayPal. Just go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. So, and another way to support what I'm doing is just to simply click that like and subscribe button and the notifications bell. Well, we're going to get straight into it today. I'm not going to really look at the chat because I'm going to share with you some thoughts. I'm going to read these thoughts so that I don't go off track and ramble. So it's a commentary video, and I've called it Gospel Adventists, Please Leave Real Adventists Alone. Now, those who know me well know that when I say things like that, I'm a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit of fun. There's a little bit of mild cajoling going on. And there's I guess, a serious component to what I'm saying. Very serious, actually. But of course, you can be any kind of Adventist you want. And I'm certainly not trying to slice you all up into different categories. However, oh yes, I'll just bring up an old screenshot or whatever you call them. You can be a liberal, progressive, revisionist, big tent, cultural, gospel-based, Sabbatarian, evangelical. That's not my Adventism kind of Adventist. I don't mind at all, of course. I'm in no way trying to control the narrative of your life. What I'm observing, though, is that there is a unique kind of Adventism that has grown up and pokes its head up at regular intervals every 30 or 40 years and attempts to perhaps align traditional Adventism more closely to the Bible, Christ-centered, to lessen perhaps the authority of Ellen G. White. This happened in 1888 with Wagner and Jones raising some new ideas and concepts on righteousness by faith. It happened many times, but another significant time was 1919, where these kind of two sides, one desiring to, let's keep Ellen White away from the pedestal and let's be real about a few things that we know about her copying, borrowing, etc. And again, the attempts to be progressive and move forward and be perhaps more biblical were shut down. And again, another attempt was made with the release of Questions on Doctrine in 1957. This time, the leadership of the church wanted to really try and present themselves as a, like evangelical movement, and the only differences were slight. Really, they were like all other Protestants, and they just went to church on Sabbath. And again, that caused a huge uproar. The traditional Adventists, the original Adventists, what I lovingly and jokingly call the real Adventists, they certainly kicked up a massive stink about all of that. And then again, in 1980 with Glacier View, it really came to a head. And after that, it became really clear. I don't know if you can see in the top corner there a tiny little picture that I have, which I believe divides Adventism into 4 categories. And leadership tends to support the traditional Adventists more, the original Adventists, and any kind of progressive thinking that may minimize or lessen the authority of Ellen White, they're onto. And in 1980, the kangaroo court of Des Ford at Glacier View demonstrated once again that the original Adventists usually win. And that was 46 years ago, and there's been no real uprising of the progressive Adventists ever since. The 4th element in my little picture there is the cultural Adventist. And I ran into a friend of mine at a gig I did on the weekend, and he said, I watched your show a little bit, but, aren't you aware that mostly Adventists, in the pew, they don't care about the issues, the doctrines, the investigative judgment, the sanctuary. They don't even know about it. And that might be true. They are the cultural Adventists who enjoy potluck, they enjoy haystacks, and they love hanging out and saying Happy Sabbath, and that's all right. It's great. However, I wanted to point out to him, but we ran out of time, that if there's nothing to see here and people just don't even really care about it, why is it that those who have a more progressive, diverse kind of viewpoint, why is it that they won't speak publicly about that? Especially if they are a pastor, if they're ordained. Look, and I get people don't have to speak publicly, but as a collective group, those who want to see progress, a more Christ-centered Adventist church, they won't say that publicly. And the reality is they will lose their job. So, over the last 5 years, and all up on SDAQ&A, I've done over 500 interviews, and I see a problem here between these 2 groups. Again, I'm generalizing. I see them collectively. When I talk to the more conservative, traditional, original, real Adventist, they're very clear about who the progressive, liberal, gospel Adventists are and what their new theology is. And they want you out. They want you gone. And when you speak to the progressives about this, sure, if it was just after 1980, they were being honest, they would know exactly what I'm talking about. They were defined back then as CBs, concerned brethren, they're the ones from the traditional camp, and Fordites, those who leant more in the direction of, let's look at some of this stuff more closely. Maybe Ellen White wasn't accurate in her claim that, God had told her that William Miller had set these dates, and although the dates were correct, what happened wasn't. They want to question that, and rightly so. I agree with them. I was a progressive Adventist. But they, when challenged about being a group, they tend to want to not be categorized. And when they demonstrate that that's true, and I go, well, perhaps you are a group. They tend to say, stop trying to divide us up and splice us up into little categories. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what you did in the first place. So anyway, I believe there is a problem here. I'm going to start reading my script for today so I don't go off track, but I did want a little preamble just to share my thoughts at the start. And then I will read my script to you, which won't be that long. And I will then look forward to looking at the chat and getting your feedback. This, to me, is a beginning of a conversation where I hope to learn more, to be able to clarify more my stance, my thoughts on this. I might be wrong, but my thought is that the traditional, original Adventism is so unique that progressing from that is not like a spectrum or a pendulum swing where there's a left and a right to one movement and standards ebb and flow. Adventism's not like your typical Protestant movement. Adventism's early claims are so unique, special for a remnant to pass on to a generation that must know about this special plan of salvation that Ellen White confirms and teaches, confirms in vision. All the source material supports this. It's so unique that when people try and progress from that, it actually unravels the traditional Adventists. And they can see it happening, and they don't want that kind of progression. They don't want it. And it puts me in a funny position because I don't agree with the traditional Adventist, original Adventist, real Adventist, Ted Wilson Adventist kind of belief. I don't believe it, but I can see why they are upset that progressive Adventists are coming along and watering down and unraveling their movement. It's as if post-Glacier view, the progressive Adventists either left the church, were kicked out of the church, or they stayed and went underground and began infiltrating the Adventist church. I know that's a big claim, but progressive Adventists tend to try and do the behind-the-scenes maneuvering, and it's time for them to admit that that has failed. And I'm not cajoling in a sense that I think you guys are useless, and I cajole and encourage you to speak up boldly, because I feel that what you've got is a way better version of Adventism. But stop trying to make it like it's a progression from Adventism and those guys have just misinterpreted it. You have something new, a new theology, and I think good on you. You should shout that from the rooftops and help create a safe place for people who join the church or young people that is visible, like an independent ministry, like a Doug Batchelor, like the Light Bearers, you know. I've got thoughts on that as well, but that's for another conversation. So yeah, so I'm not going to look at the chat. I'm going to just read my script. I'm trying a new thing. It's a prompter up the side here that scrolls. So who knows if that works, if it looks like I'm reading and off to the side and distracted. We're experimenting today. We're beginning this topic afresh. It's challenged me over the last little while, the last couple of years, and the endless optimism that progressive, liberal, gospel Adventists have, that their special gem of Adventism is gaining a foothold, is changing the church, is going to become a movement of influence that will transform the traditional Adventist, original Adventist view. I'm just realizing that that's false. Anyway, we're kind of jumping into new territory here, and with the prompter, and we'll just see how we go. So yeah, I'll read this. It's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes at the most, and we'll see what happens. So here we go. Wish me luck. Okay, clarifying my position on progressive Adventism and my belief that they are a movement within a movement that has a totally different theology. A traditional Adventist says we have the truth, believes they are the remnant, and that Ellen White is 100% a fully fledged prophet with ongoing authority, and that they have a special last days message that contains a plan of salvation that needs to be shared to the world before the imminent return of Jesus. They believe that on October 22, 1844, Christ 100% began a new phase of his heavenly ministry. This wasn't just a providential event that spawned the SDA church to grow out of it. It was a supernatural happening foretold in the Bible and birthed out of a false prophetic understanding and teaching of William Miller's. He said that Christ would return on that date. The traditional Adventist says that this message is so special and unique that Christ's new phase is where he now judges all who have lived, and then he'll move on to the living. Probation's closing for individuals during this process, and then finally closing for all, at which point those living who are righteous must remain righteous during the time of trouble, not sinning in spite of facing tremendous temptation and threats. They must also keep the Sabbath during this time and not break the Sabbath at all. And do all of this without Jesus being there as their intercessor. He has returned to his Father at this time. Soon after, when they have stood firm and have kept all the commandments, proving Satan's claim wrong that this can't be done, they will have vindicated God and demonstrated to the onlooking angels and people living on other sin-free planets that it is possible after all. Christ will then return and take them to heaven. Also, the righteous dead will be raised up and will also rise up to heaven. So yes, this special, unique message called the three angels message is actually an addition to the gospel, even given a new name, the everlasting gospel. This new message for the last days, confirmed in visions by Ellen White, is so unique and special that it can't be tampered with, watered down, or tweaked. These pillars of the Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist Church, its doctrine, must remain firm and stand strong until Christ completes the atoning work, a work that wasn't quite completed at the cross. Those who seek to progress from this traditional view, supported in vision by Ellen White, as I said, are to be shunned and shut down, even asked to leave the SDA church. Why? Because their new theology unravels the original message. Ellen supported this original message until the day she died, and her books carry on in that support. That's a little summary of the traditional Adventist, whereas a progressive Adventist is one who says, maybe, maybe not, we'll focus on the Bible and Jesus alone, thanks. And when asked, why don't you leave if your view is one that often challenges the original view, they usually answer that traditional Adventists have simply misinterpreted Ellen's view, and that, hey, Ellen said she was a messenger, not a prophet, and that we should choose the Bible over her. In practice, though, whenever the progressives say these things, especially if they are SDA employed, they lose their jobs or find that progress in their career is sidetracked or stalled. And those who are born into Adventism or come into the church as adults are soon faced with these original teachings that are legalistic by design, and many fall for them. And they get bound up in subtle, nuanced legalism. Instead of standing firm and bold for their new version of Adventism, Liberal, progressive, gospel Adventists generally remain quiet and preach their teachings behind closed doors, occasionally speaking up, only to be silenced or trampled on. Leadership leans to supporting traditional Adventists, and one only needs to study the times that progressive Adventists have tried to share new ideas, attempts including, as I mentioned earlier, 1888, 1919, 1957, 1980, that those who spoke out are soon shut down. Even Ellen herself, though in her defense of any progress in thinking is not significant, and claims to be Christ-focused, but always returns to teaching that man needs to vindicate God. So I wanted to take a few minutes now to clarify my position. This comes after my many conversations with progressive, liberal, gospel Adventists. And in my recent interview with Dr. Martin Weber, I basically did a long rambling chat. Apologies, Martin. And it felt like all my concerns and issues just poured out into one big bottleneck of a monologue. The reality is that over the last 2 years, I've been having some epiphanies. And last week, I rewatched several interviews that I've done with progressive liberal gospel Adventists and began to realize that I might be ready to share a brief summary of these previously jumbled ideas. Don't worry, it will be a short presentation, and after I finish, I'd love to hear your thoughts and input in the chat, and maybe we can work through some of these ideas together. I'm happy to be wrong, but feel that I'm actually onto something, and just maybe I have some valid things to say. Excuse me. So, liberal, progressive, gospel Adventists, before you jump down my throat and tell me you can be whatever kind of Adventist you want to be, and for me to stop attacking you, take a few breaths, sit back, and ponder what I'm about to say. Then let's discuss it together. Why do I think my position is valid and carries some weight? Well, I was a fifth-generation Seventh-day Adventist. I also spent 30 years of my life happily sharing my music ministry to both traditional Adventist and progressive Adventists. I was committed to sharing a Christ-centered, Bible-focused, good news gospel message to all who would listen. And I took my efforts seriously. For example, in a 2-year period in the early 90s, I played over 500 gigs at Adventist venues and programs at both conservative and liberal churches. Also, in a 1-year period in the mid-90s, where we actually kept some records of what we did, myself and Pastor Casey Wolverton led 11 week of prayer week-long programs and had over 60 young people request to be baptized. And we organized for each to have their local pastor contact them for Bible studies. So there was some follow-up to that as well. In all this time, from the 80s through the 90s and into the 2000s, I became painfully aware of the split within the church. Every single church we played at or town we sang in was divided literally into two. And even most towns had two separate churches and locations. And since leaving the SDA church 10 years ago next month, I have conducted over 500 interviews with every kind of Adventist you can imagine. Plus, growing up, I had people I loved and family members I adored on both sides of this divide. So believe me, I heard and observed the polarized discussions. I witnessed the whole concerned brethren movement, pre- and post-Glacier view. And yeah, the progressives knew very well back then that there was a massive divide Surprises me that now they say, hey, there's nothing to see here. Back then, you were either a CB or a Fordite. And for years, that even determined if you had a job in the church or not. Many progressives suggest that things have changed and that young people don't even know or care about the pillars of Adventism. Well, my answer to that then is this. Why won't you come on my show, especially if you're ordained and SDA employed, and share your points of belief that differ from the traditional ones? The answer you will give me, you know very well, is that you won't. And the reason is because you'd lose your job. So if no one cares anymore about these divergent beliefs, why can't you speak publicly about them? So I think, yes, there is something to see here. To say otherwise indicates that you are either deluded, disingenuous, duped, or dishonest. I do think I have my finger on the pulse of Adventism and can share certain theories that may even help gospel Adventism flourish within the SDA church. 40 to 60% of young people leave the church. Maybe by having this discussion with me, you gospelers can actually gain some influence and even a foothold in the Adventist church and actually have a positive influence on the youth. Just like you all did with me. Thank you. I appreciated it. But times have changed. Sadly, you've lost your mojo and need a little nudge back in the right direction. No need to thank me. And so, as offended as my liberal, progressive, gospel Adventist brothers and sisters might get with my assertions that they aren't real Adventists, none have actually ever said to me in any interview, yeah, we could have done better. So moving forward, let's talk about what we can learn and how we can improve ways to share the gem of a message that we have. So I've reflected on these many conversations that I've had, and I can see more clearly now what I was trying to say and where I didn't quite land ideas as clearly as I would have liked. And I think this matters because this isn't just an abstract theological discussion. This is about how beliefs actually function in people's lives. So let me start here with this more concise and clear view. And, excuse me, let me confirm that in full, what's the word for it? Accountability, I left ChatGPT on a high shelf. Okay. I don't have an issue with people wanting a more grace-centered, compassionate, and healthy version of Adventism. In fact, I understand that impulse deeply. If anything, I resonate with it. But my concern is this. Is progressive Adventism actually a reinterpretation of the system, or is it, in practice, a quiet departure from it while still using the same language? During my many conversations, I've found myself circling this idea again and again. And I think the reason is because I've come to see that the real issue isn't just what is being said now, it's what the system has historically meant. Because when you look at traditional Adventist theology, particularly doctrines like the investigative judgment, the close of probation, Sabbath keeping as a salvational requirement, etc., and the idea of God being vindicated through human lives, These are not minor ideas. They form a structure. And that structure historically has carried very real implications. So when I hear progressive voices say things like, "That's not how I understand it," or "I wouldn't put it that way," I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to preserve something meaningful while removing what feels harmful. And again, I genuinely respect that impulse. But here's where my concern comes in. Even when expressed more gently, the underlying framework often remains the same. And if the framework remains the same, then the implications don't entirely disappear. They may be softened, they may be reframed, but they're still there. So for me, the question becomes, at what point does reinterpretation become departure? Because if we're no longer affirming what the system originally taught, particularly in its more difficult implications, then I think we need to be honest about that, not as an attack, but as clarity. One of the key tensions in the conversations I have had with liberal progressive gospel Adventists has been around this idea. Does the system still place a meaningful weight on human performance? Now, it may not be stated as bluntly today. It may not be framed in terms of fear or pressure. But when you follow the logic of the system, especially historically, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that, at some level, human beings are still participating in the vindication of God within the SDA frame. And that matters. Because once you introduce that idea, even subtly, you introduce a certain kind of pressure. And this brings me to what I think is actually my central concern. It's not just doctrinal. It's not just about being technically right or wrong. It's about lived experience. What does this system do to a person when they take it seriously? Because for many, including myself, the experience wasn't neutral. It wasn't just an interesting theological framework. It created anxiety, self-doubt, a sense of never quite being secure, and a constant awareness of being evaluated. And that didn't come from nowhere. It came from the structure itself. Now, I understand that not everyone experiences it that way, and I want to be fair about that. Some people genuinely find peace within a progressive interpretation of Adventism, and I don't want to dismiss that. But I do think it raises an important question. Is that peace coming from the system or from a reinterpretation that is moving away from the system's original implications? And that's the tension I keep trying to explore in those interviews. Perhaps not as cleanly as I could have, but that is the heart of it. I'm not trying to trap my guests. I'm not trying to win an argument. I am trying to understand, where are the actual boundaries of this belief system? What does it really teach? What does it lead to when followed through? And are we being fully honest about that, progressive gospel liberal Adventists? Because I think clarity here matters. not just for theological accuracy, but for people, for real people. People who are trying to make sense of their faith, their identity, and their relationship with God. So if I were to summarize my position as clearly and simply as I can, it would be this. I respect the desire to create a healthier, more grace-centered version of Adventism. But I remain concerned that unless gospel Adventists fully acknowledge and address the original structure and implications of the system, they risk softening the language without truly resolving the underlying issues. And for those who take the system seriously, that distinction matters. And maybe that's where I'll leave it for now, not as a final word, but as a clearer one, because I think this conversation is worth continuing. And I want to keep having it honestly, thoughtfully, and with as much clarity as I can bring to it. So that's my little pre-prepared commentary on some of the things that have been really coming to my mind over the last couple of years especially. And anyone who feels that they disagree with me and that I should stop banging on about it. Someone this morning said that I just keep barking up the same tree. I encourage those people to please come on the program and let's talk about these things. And sadly, you will soon find that some questions that I ask you, you will squirm a little bit because you will know that some people are watching and those people have power. And those people can do a lot to harm you in many different ways. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's healthy at all. So I'm going to go to some chat. If you want to leave now, you're more than welcome. Once we've heard of what people want to say, might be another 10, 15 minutes, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's the end of this part of the conversation. And thanks for bearing with me. And progressives out there who are confused with what I'm doing, come on the show. I think it's important that you come out here where the rubber hits the road and experience that in fact you do have a movement within a movement. And I'm saying all this honestly to try and help. A little bit of cajoling, sure. A little bit of tongue-in-cheek language. But essentially, the gospel liberal progressive Adventist method has failed. 46 years after Glacier View, the last time you guys tried anything of significance, what happened after that? Okay, let's go to, so those who are leaving now, thank you for staying with me. I particularly invited a few people. Thank you, Dexter. He's reminded everyone to please hit that like and subscribe button. And let's see if any comments actually were relating to what I just said. And Jude, thank you for this comment. They don't want to rock the boat in their eyes. Yeah. ironically, recently someone told me that they were chatting to some of the progressive gospel liberal Adventists in one of the behind closed doors Sabbath schools, and that person said, well, we don't want to speak up too much because we think we might lose our influence. And I just thought that's so ironic that they won't speak up and share their message that would have an influence on young people particularly. And so they stay quiet. Jude says, I say rocket, Peter. Thank you. Cindy says, do progressives embrace the infamous 28? Well, here's the interesting thing, Cindy Lou. They actually wrote it. And this goes to my point that they, instead of shouting from the rooftops, they try and keep their concerns. I've heard them literally say this in their back pocket and hope that they can change things with behind the scenes influences. And the 28 fundamentals, tell me if I'm wrong, but in the study I've done, are basically, watered down, more evangelical, gospel verbiage, and that really go to validate and confirm what I'm saying, that, hey, look at this. But if you look closely at the infamous 28, as Cindy Lewis called them, even they lean to this human involvement. Dexter says, I should split the screen so you can see better I know, I'm sorry. It's so tiny. I will try and find the original photo for that in a moment, if you like. Leanne writes, I'm so thankful for your work here, Peter. Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate that. GPT may have been on a shelf, but Copilot wasn't. And that was a little bit of a joke too, when Ellen White was asked if she had, I think it was Turner, if she had read the works of Turner or his article, which suspiciously sounded a lot like her public claims. She said that she had the document, but it was high on a shelf. Ah, dear. And Jude says, well done, Peter. You've explained the groups for me clearly. I agree. People's lives are at stake. If you're in the ministry or of any sort, you're obligated to God, not anyone else. And Mountain Viewer, I don't think I've seen you in the chat before. 4th gen SDA here in the US. We seldom hear anything about the IJ from our pastors, much more grace focused. The 18:8 message revival in the late 1980s helped Robert Wheeland, etc., and Glacier View. Thanks for that comment, and it did help. But don't you also see that it became a dividing line in the sand as well, where if you appeared to be more in support of Des Ford's theology, not necessarily agreeing with everything he said, but with this idea that there's some serious problems with the investigative judgment and sanctuary doctrine, let's look into it. If you seemed to be that kind of a person, you would be literally kicked out of the church or at employment. And at many, I remember even here when I graduated from Avondale, being interviewed in 1985, and even then, 5 years after Glacier View, there was, the panel were asking me the kind of questions to find out if I was a liberal progressive Adventist or if I was, a good old traditional Adventist. So, yeah, thank you for that comment. It was helpful. And when you say that you seldom hear about it from your pastors, please go to your pastors and ask them to come on the show. And you will all of a sudden find that they squirm a little bit when I ask them questions because they don't want it to be seen that they don't agree with the traditional views of the investigative judgment. That's why they don't talk about it, because they just think, if I don't talk about it, no one will notice. But my point is that if you say to them, well, do you believe it or not? Well, crickets. And Barry Ford highlights, Mountain Viewer, the IJ does come up consistently through the Sabbath school lessons, and I believe these lessons are worldwide. And yes, it's actually very rare for the sanctuary doctrine not to be preached in Adventist churches predominantly, collectively speaking. It is everywhere. Adventism is riddled with the investigative judgment teaching, the sanctuary doctrine teaching in its more traditional forms. I'm chatting tomorrow with Gillian Ford. She's just released volume 12 of her series on pre and during and post-Glacier View. And we're going to be discussing a little bit the several versions of the investigative judgment that have popped up over the years. So that will be very interesting. And Mountain View replies, my 34-year-old daughter attended SDA schools all the way through college, and she heard very little IJ. Doesn't know much about it either, and not a lot of E.G. White. She and her friends appreciate Ty Gibson. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm really appreciating your comments, Mountain Viewer. Please continue to be a watcher and an engager and a chat person. I agree with you. When I began this journey with SDAQ&A, I was sitting with about 20 young people, and I said to them, do you guys know what the investigative judgment is? None of them knew. And I view that as progressive Adventism's success in watering down Adventism. It's interesting that you note Ty Gibson, Light Bearers, David Asherick, and how her friends appreciated those guys. Now, I know Miles and I would disagree on this. He calls them like the new Adventists, the nouveau Adventist, that they are kind of, and even Ryan Davis would disagree with me on this. But my theory with them is that they are an independent ministry who are simply rebranding original Adventism. And there's things they won't talk about because they know that young kids won't like it. And they speak in very positive gospel-sounding language. But if you dig deep into what Ty Gibson and David Asherick preach, and no, it's not a criticism. I'm just saying that they've gone, hey, there's a gap in the market here. There's a vacuum where young people know nothing really about the Adventist church and its traditional teachings. I believe they are firm believers in that. And I say that because I've traced their ties of influence. The people that have influenced them, literally person by person, go back to the Standish brothers, who were very, very much literally members of the Concerned Brethren group and movement that wanted Des Ford out. So the light bearers aren't, in my humble opinion, aren't actually trying to bring new theology into the church. They're simply rebranding it in a much more palatable way. Good on them. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying I wish there was an independent, progressive gospel Adventist movement that had traction and influence like they do, like Doug Batchelor does. But they aren't they're not progressive, liberal gospel Adventists. They are very much, their lineage goes back to the Standish brothers. And I would love them to come on the show and prove me wrong. But their Adventism underneath that layer of sheen and shine is traditional, original Adventism. Dexter says, soliloquy sounds more thoughtful, Peter. Yes, okay, it was a soliloquy, not a monologue. Jude writes, haha, Jesus banged on about important things, Peter, so you go for it. We are forgetful, sinful humans. And Eng 3RI, you are spot on, Peter. Thank you. I appreciate that, because I do get a lot of pushback from the progressive gospel Adventists, even some blocking me, because they really don't like being accountable. Sugarcane writes, I'm just laughing at these new names. It's good to have, there's new people watching today. Thank you. It's great to see. We're not far off 4,000 subscribers here. About 3.5 at SDAQ&A in our private group. I think close to 3,000 in Voice, SDA People's Voice. So we're building a great community here. Thanks for being a part of it. I agree. For real reform, Ellen G. White, IJ, and day year principle eschatology has to be jettisoned. Yes. Frank Merendino used that word for that first lodged into my brain, and it's so true. And Moto Sapien, good to see you back, Moto Sapien. I don't think I've seen you in the chat for a little while. Peter offers for some to leave, nobody leaves. Clarify what you mean there, Moto Sapien. I'm not too sure. Mountain Viewer writes, compared to how I grew up in the 60s and 70s, there is much more grace-focused and more assurance of salvation. But my brother is ultra-conservative, CB type, and they keep us in the dark ages. Again, another important thing you've raised there, Mountain Viewer. You and I are probably a similar age. The 60s, 70s version of Adventism was definitely not a grace-focused assurance of salvation one. Des Ford came along, and honestly, his message was assurance of salvation. The gospel is good news because your salvation is assured. And so when you see that the church now is more grace-focused, that is because of Des Ford. And in my little soliloquy earlier, I pointed that out. And I said it better then because it was written that I wrote it down. Now I'm rambling again. But is that assurance of salvation because of the Adventist message, or is it because you have moved away from that and created something new? And I think it's because Des Ford and the grace-focused guys and women moved us away from that original systemic Adventist teaching. But to say that your brother, ultra-conservative CB type, is keeping you in the dark ages infers to me that you think that movements like Adventism do progress. They don't. I've used the analogy sometimes of Adventism. Real Adventism is like a tree, and people are bound to it. Imagine a big rubber band around you and the tree, and some are happy with that tight control. I'm bound to this tree of Adventism, it's right. And others of us kind of pushed and moved away from the tree, placing pressure on the rubber band, moving away. and it either we snapped free of it or it pulled us back in. And I'm glad I snapped free of it, but it is not like normal Baptist, Anglican, Episcopalian, Protestant movements where people have a framework within that's left and right, liberal, progressive, that has a pendulum that swings. Adventism is not that. And so progressives think they're bringing about a change, but they will never change that oak tree of Adventism. So the CBs aren't keeping you in the dark ages. They're simply saying, don't stray from this core message that is very unique. Dexter writes, the gospel is so beautiful. I don't understand why so many get upset with saying Jesus is my Sabbath, Jesus is my rest. And that's another good point. Even with the Sabbath, when I was chatting to Dr. Martin Webber the other day, who I really appreciate, by the way, he was saying that very thing, that the Sabbath is a rest day. It's made for us to be able to really reflect and celebrate Jesus and to have a day away from the world. But when I pushed and said, so will it ever become a salvific test to keep it in such a way that is so correct that doing so or not doing so will affect your salvation? And he said, well, that's the false interpretation that Adventists have placed on it. And that the interpretation he has is correct. I would agree with him that his interpretation is correct, but I wouldn't agree that traditional Adventists are misinterpreting their message. They aren't misinterpreting their core message. They're saying that if you don't keep the Sabbath, you won't go to heaven. There will come a time, if you don't keep the Sabbath, where it will become a test, and even your David Ashericks and your Ty Gibsons, with the glossy Adventism they're portraying, even they will admit, and please come on the show, you guys, if you ever watch, you will not say publicly that keeping the Sabbath isn't salvific. Did I make that word up? So even that alone, to me, negates Adventism, progressive, liberal, gospel, traditional, prog-ad, trad-ad. You cannot escape that. You might not believe it, but by keeping your name attached to the Adventist Church, you are saying essentially that you agree that one day the Sabbath will be a test of your salvation. Ellen White saw it in a vision, a halo around the Sabbath commandment. To literally to say that that isn't Adventism, that's not your Adventism, boy, you've been duped. You're deluded. You're being disingenuous or dishonest, one of the 4 Ds. Brian says that perhaps the CBs are being replaced. I would probably disagree with that. I think the CBs are now more marinated within Adventism with a huge amount of influence, more than ever before. I would say people like Ron Kelly, Conrad Vine, Doug Batchelor, many other the very top level leadership, Erton Kohler. These guys are concerned that the progressive Adventists unravel their. So concerned brethren are more powerful than ever. no, I can't quite read that. There's no such thing as a gospel SDA. You're either legalistic SDA, Galatians SDA, or liberal SDA. Yeah, I think my point is really that, yeah, I agree with you. When I say gospel or progressive, I'm just grasping for straws of people who really wake up and go, boy, I don't actually believe a lot of the pillars of Adventism. Oh, mine is more liberal or Galatian focused. Mine is more gospel focused. Whatever they claim, whatever their reality is or their belief claims are, that's not my point. My point is that people who wake up and question the traditional, original source, legalistic Adventism, they place themselves into this other group I speak of that in many ways are challenging the original group. They're not challenging the cultural Adventists, but they are at that point, I believe, in a position where they need to define their beliefs and create a space for young people and people joining the church to find a safe haven within the Adventist church. Because believe me, the wave of traditional, original, real Adventism just rides around the globe constantly, big, like a tsunami, and gathers up every liberal, progressive Adventist and spits them out onto the beach. Yeah. So thanks for that point. Sugarcane adds, children born to parents who are controlled by corrupt passions are worthless. Yeah, that's an Ellen G. White statement there from the testimonies too. There's no way to soften things like this. Pure eugenics, ideology, and demonic. Look, I agree. I mean, to me, I'm observing Adventist culture. I'm not an Adventist. And I don't believe Ellen White should have any place of any kind in a gospel home. I do not agree with any kind of Adventist who incorporates Ellen G. White into their belief system. If you weave her into your belief system, to me, you are blaspheming the gospel claim. To me, Ellen White is a false prophet. I don't agree with any kind of Adventist that tries to infuse her in any way into their belief system. A woman or a man who says children born to parents who are controlled by corrupt passions are worthless. There's many comments like that. That is not, yeah, okay, let's say she made a mistake when she said that, and she's human. She just makes mistakes. Okay. But there's nothing she says that is of any value in a gospel lived life. Some people say, well, she pointed me to the gospel. Okay, well then now you can get rid of her. If she pointed you to the gospel, great. Now get rid of her. Lots of people can point you to the gospel. Some people claim Joseph Smith pointed them to the gospel, but they're not still following him if they've left Mormonism. Thank you for this conversation, by the way. I'm really appreciating the comments. It is not just SDAism which should be distilled. It's all Christianity, since its theology is designed to divide. All but the love and unconditional acceptance of God are divisive. Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I guess what I'm speaking to is, as an observer, a former Adventist looking in from the outside, what I'm observing is this little storm in a teacup. wow, there are many other things that can be chatted about, and many other things that I'm involved in that have nothing to do with Adventism. This is SDAQ&A. This is where we look at Adventism under the spotlight. We are a lighthouse here at SDAQ&A. We shine the light. Oh, there's the rocks. Oh, there's a nice little patch of safe beach. Or, oh, hang on, there's some waves coming. But yes, there are lots of things to talk about. And Chanel writes, will the real SDA please stand up? And that's a good point. That's why I use the word. And perhaps my commentary where the title was Ted Wilson, a real Adventist, something like that, caused so much upset because I'm saying that those guys are actually pretty clear about what their Adventism is. All the others, well, A, they don't even get to be too clear on it because they won't speak publicly about it. They just water it down. Hey, we don't even talk about it. I mean, what kind of a brag is that? What kind of bragging is it that, hey, at our church, we don't even talk about the investigative judgment? If Adventism is so important and that claim is so incredible, and you're a part of a church that says it is, how crazy is it to say to someone, well, we don't talk about it? Wow. Like, to me, what, do you want a medal for that? If you're not talking about it, and you're glad that you're not talking about it, please be aware that your church disagrees with you. They would love if you were talking about it more. Church leadership at the highest level would love for you to be talking about it more. That was a good point I just made there. Oh dear. Ange writes, growing up in our church in LA, we very rarely heard the term IJ used, but there was and still is a pressure to be perfect and fear of not being allowed into heaven. Yeah, very true. So yes, very true, and segued perfectly from what I just said. Thank you, Ange. Yeah, even if they're not talking about it, and you can brag, hey, our church doesn't talk about it, there is still the pressure there. The human effort is still definitely there. Thank you, Ange. It's kind of crazy how so many SDAs want to hide what they truly teach. Yeah. There is so much religious trauma my friends and family are having to work through. Yes. That's why in my little monologue before my commentary, which I think only went for 10 minutes, I hope people, if they're interested, just watch that one little, I don't know, it must have been 20 minutes in. I might cut it and just post it as a separate program, just that bit, because now I'm into full rambling mode. Pete, send an invite to Adventist AI Abe. Okay, maybe someone can send me a link. It's up. It is helpful to Peter's channel. Oh, thumbs up. Subscribe. Yes, thank you, Jude. And come back and comment later. Yes, that does really help when you do that. I appreciate that. And Brian points out Neo-Adventist. Yeah, it's funny. When Miles was talking about the New Adventist, and he was, I think, seeing Ashrek and Ty as these new young guys that were actually progressing on from Adventism and trying to change it. I was literally working on a show called Nouveau Adventist, but it was about the progressive Adventists, those that are like Des Ford and have carried on his legacy. They are the true new Adventists. And as I said earlier, the Ty Gibsons and the David Ashericks are not in any way challenging those authoritative claims of Ellen White. When push comes to shove, you dig a little bit deeper into the message of David Asherick and Ty Gibson, and good on them, not criticizing. They're just branding it all in a nice, shiny way, but they're branding traditional Adventism. And if they disagree, come on the show and let's ask a few questions. Let's see. And exactly, Ange, yes, they are rebranding to make it appealing to the youth. And the young people have truly taken it on board. It's massive. But there is no gospel Galatians-based SDA independent ministry that has traction and broad influence like these guys do. There's no light bearers for the progressive. There's Good News Unlimited, not to be confused with my weekly Good News Fellowship, total different thing. But Good News Unlimited is kind of the Des Ford independent ministry. Go and check it out. I know a lot of progressives secretly used to get the Good News Unlimited magazine. Fred Simmons writes, Pastor Mark Finley fell and broke his hip and is getting a replacement. He should have been pastured long ago. He has Adventist insurance, so he'll land on his feet. Usually broken warhorse is a shot. Oh dear, I shouldn't have read that last bit, but thanks for your thoughts there, Fred. Mark Finley is an incredible concern, brethren, 100%. He is a CB. He is not a Fordite. And I have a lot of respect for people like Mark and Ted Wilson who clearly state what Adventism is. Not what it is for them, but they clearly assess the source material and Ellen White's teachings, and they parrot it back to us in a very clear way that agrees with that source material. I don't like that they are so good at influencing people to believe that ridiculous doctrine, the ridiculous doctrine of traditional Adventism. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I admire that they accurately portray that traditional view. And there's lots of nuanced ways to look at this and what I'm saying. Brian writes, if you look at Light Bearers, the end series that Ty Gibson did, I'm pretty sure he teaches that the seal of God in Revelation is the Holy Spirit, but the Sabbath is a sign of that sealing, not the seal, 100%. But to me, that's clever marketing. Paul does not teach in any way that the seal of God is anything but the Holy Spirit and the connection you have with the Holy Spirit and the importance of that. There is no indication that the Sabbath has anything to do with it. And in fact, by including the Sabbath into that equation, that it's a sign of even the sealing, by even doing that, you are infusing Pharisaical teaching, Old Covenant teaching, into the New Covenant teaching. So the very fact that he cleverly rebranded it by saying, yes, the seal of God is the Holy Spirit, but added, and the Sabbath is a sign of that sealing. It's not the seal, it's a sign of it. That keeps him very much in line with the tradition and proves my point. Those guys have a powerful independent ministry that hugely changed the whole narrative structure of our very conference here in Australia, the North New South Wales Conference. They set up their ministry here. What did they call it? Arise. And it permeated and changed, and even to the point of the conference reallocating money to ministries that they ran. The youth were involved. They were having a great time. But those guys are simply rewriting traditional Adventism into a more palatable, rebranded version. And I'm not criticizing it, but it's a successful business model. In the US, light bearers are big. I've listened to Ty for years, and we took him out to eat when he came to our church. Ty has nothing to do with CBs, exclamation mark. He has been very open to the 18:8 message of gospel. So have the CBs, Ty Gibson and David Asherek. David Asherek was very much influenced by, I know him well, the guy that used to play bass in a later version of Bill Haley and the Comets, Louis Torres, I think. And Louis is very much connected to previous lineage of those who go back to the Standish brothers, who were literally involved with the Concerned Brethren, who all gathered every week in the Burnside home, just a few minutes from where I live now, in the 70s. And look, Mountain View, and again, I really value your comments. Please come back. I love this kind of conversation. I love that you're really speaking your heart. And I like Ty. I would love to hang out with Ty Gibson. I'm not criticizing these guys. Good on them for rebranding traditional Adventism. It needs it. It needs that rebranding for young people. Good on them for doing that. But it is not progressive. And the 1888 message is something that both CBs and progressive liberal Adventists claim is their, moment. And the 1919 also, both sides claim that was their moment. I would love to be wrong about that. Again, it's not criticizing Ty or David. Good on him. Good on Doug Batchelor. It's a fantastic independent ministry. There's a vacuum there that they're filling. There's a need that they are filling, obviously. But I would question that they aren't actually really traditional Adventists themselves. They have a few standard things like women's ordination. They believe women should be ordained. Good on them. But that's a very good marketing for young people, to realize that young people want women to be ordained. So that's a good move. And traditional Adventism does need a bit of a rebrand, though Doug Batchelor has nailed it, amazing facts. He's nailed traditional Adventism. So look, Mountain View, it sounds like Ty. Ask him to come on the show. I will be very kind. I think he's a great person. I would love to chat to him, and I might come away from that interview, like Ryan Davis says that Ty isn't part of that kind of 3ABN style Adventism. They nail it too. And good on them. They're speaking clearly. I'm saying that your progressive, Galatians-based, gospel-focused liberal Adventist doesn't have a movement officially sanctioned, an independent movement, or even one that's not. They fluff around. Adventism has gone the way of every denomination before it, from a tight package of beliefs to doctrinal diversity, not unique. I would say that progressive Adventism is not unique. I would say, though, that they are truly holding on to their tight package of beliefs, that Adventism, scratch under the surface, has not moved very far at all. And Motor Sapiens clarifying what he said before. Hey, Peter, just saying the comments are some of the best parts. Who would leave for that? Yeah, that's true. Oh, dear. Andy writes, earlier you mentioned power and harm. Doesn't that indicate cult behavior? Yeah, I agree. It is a sect at the very least. What's your great term? I'm not sure if you made it up, Andy, but is it a high demand church? Something along those lines. Yeah, it is. And high demand churches and cults and sects place a huge emphasis on not straying from the outline, the line, the template. Don't stray too far from the template. By the way, my reading of the the prompter, I know it's probably sounded a bit like reading. I could practice it a bit more, but I quite liked having something concise to say and not rambling like I am now. But I think there are things in the conversation we're having with the chat that add to that. So I'm not going to stop rambling down the track, but I'm interested in what you think. Did that work, me reading from the prompter a little bit more scripted? Dexter adds, then in online arguments, repeat the doctrines exactly as we claim they are. Many bear false witness without batting an eye. So much for their mouth, no lie was found or they were blameless. Mountain Viewer writes, I didn't know what Des taught until the last few years, but I learned the gospel and assurance of salvation in the late 1980s through Robert Wieland, Donald Short, who spoke to huge audiences. Yes, I agree. All of those guys, Cottrell, Heppenstall, Grieve, there's so many people, Des Ford, that brought in this assurance of salvation into the Adventist church. But my point is that, yeah, it's there, but it's not because of Adventism. It's in spite of Adventism. And Chanel writes, Pete, that's called indoctrination, i.e. a false sense of security, that they are the remnant, they have all the answers. That's cultic. And Andy says, sorry, Peter, they don't want to change Adventism. They just want to make it palatable. Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And validated what you've said there by people, the progressive liberal Galatians gospel Adventist, by they're not wanting to actually have a more confrontational kind of conversation about it and define their beliefs, because that goes against being palatable. The people that weren't palatable left the church. The progressives that weren't palatable people left the church. They made claims, they stood for what they believed in, and they either left or they were fired, axed out. Those who stayed tend to be those who would rather just not rock the boat and, hey, let's make Adventism cool, and, you know, hey, Jesus, hey, did you have a happy Sabbath? And they're kind of a softer breed of progressive, but you're right, they just want it to be palatable. And Rochelle has just popped in and reminded everybody that book club is on this week, Pacific time, 7 p.m, which I think is 2 p.m. Sydney time, after our gospel program. Thanks for reminding us, Rochelle. In fact, the Good News Fellowship I love it. Every week we gather together, and we don't get the same kind of viewing numbers that SDAQ&A gets, because it's good news. Anything that's a bit controversial, we're all in. Oh, yeah, let's watch that. Let's engage with that. We gather together with the Good News Fellowship, and might only be 20 people watching. So, but I love it. I absolutely love our gathering there. And we all gather with slightly different viewpoints, but the common ground is the gospel, the teachings of Jesus, and everyone springboards from that. So join us. It's easy to find. Just trying to see if I can bring up the link. No, I can't find it. But if you just look at Gospel Good News Fellowship, you'll find us. Thanks for your support, everyone, by the way. It really helps. So if you'd like to support what I'm doing, just throw a couple of dollars into the PayPal there. Barry Ford is correct. The Sabbath is called the Great Test. Oh, and Brian clarifies. I was surprised, Brian, when you said that. I thought, oh, that doesn't sound like. Brian was meaning they're dying out. They're not growing. Thanks for clarifying that. Hey, good suggestion. Why not do an interview with Mountain Viewer 99? That'd be fantastic. Find us on Facebook, Mountain Viewer. It's a private group, but join there and then shoot me a private message. Let's make it happen. Oh, I love this. Frank Merendino has nailed it. I often use the terms chalk and cheese and water and oil. Adventism and Galatians are like oil and water. Galatians, rightly understood, is Adventist kryptonite. Yes. Frank is one of our gospel speakers, one of the regulars at our Good News Fellowship program, and which kicks off Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific time, and Fridays here in Australia, 12 midday. Yes, that is incredible. In fact, Frank is our kind of lead presenter, keeps helping us come back onto track, pulling in a real grasp of the gospel in context, and really appreciate that. But yeah, Galatians, rightly understood, is Adventist kryptonite. And Ellen White just doesn't fit with that. Even in Desire of Ages and Steps to Christ, great titles, great branding, but not biblical. You read Desire of Ages and Steps to Christ. Come on, it's so not shiny, sparkly, gospel-based at all. There's little words in there. And John writes, DM Canwright and others agree with Peter wholeheartedly. And Canwright was there in the early days. And his book, which I love to hold up somewhere around, might be behind me. Oh no, there it is. Anyway, what a great book. He's written 2 great books. I think he left in 1879, maybe. Ange writes, Ellen G. White teachings are dangerous. And Brian adds to that another testimony that Ellen wrote. Wicked, naughty children, God does not love you. And it's good to have Jane here. Hopefully you can watch the early first. So if you hop in at about 15, 20 minutes and then watch for about 20, 30 minutes, that's where I've done my scripted part. This is the open conversation. Love you to go back and watch that, Jane. Chanel writes, Peter, Ellen's writings are intertwined with scriptures. On the pulpit void, the phrase Sister White said this unbeknownst to gullible flock. Yeah. Yeah. And Lone Viking points out that they were quite heretical in their early views of the Trinity. And Sir Nilo points out that you cannot have, so whether you're talking about it or not in church, I'm pretty sure that light bearers would infuse the three angels' message into their teachings and their courses. But you cannot have the three angels' message without the IJ, without the October 22, 1844 belief. There's no way David Asscherick or Ty Gibson would say that nothing supernatural happened that night. There's no way they would say that. Whereas people like Bill Johnson on my show, when I said, can you be an Adventist and not believe in that? The IJ, the October 22 supernatural belief. And he said, yes, of course. I mean, these guys loved the church. They loved the cultural aspects of it. And Adventism has a very tight-knit way of, keeping people connected in good ways. And, I respect that. But those guys, after Glacier View, when they were absolutely shocked at the treatment of Des Ford, just go and watch season 2, episode 1. They were shocked. But people like Fritz Guy, Larry Geraghty, Bill Johnson, instead of leaving, they thought, look, let's keep this in the back pocket and let's influence the church from within to make it more progressive, lessening the authority of Ellen White. And they were involved very closely with the 28 Fundamentals book. 27 fundamentals back then. And I'm suggesting that the progressives tried to do that behind the scenes and they failed. And it's time to be accountable and to admit it and say, look, we failed, could have done better. Moving forward, let's learn from our mistakes and try and galvanize people around a belief system that we're proud of. This is a good point. John writes, it can only be that people who do not believe in Ellen G. White's spirit of prophecy and yet remain in the SDA Church are not truly following conviction of the Spirit to come out of her, my people. It's so true. And Ellen White would be shocked with the way the progressive Adventists try to minimize her authority. Chanel writes, Adventism is a mirage of contradictions. I just checked my script prompter thing, and my actual little scripted part of today's program was only 8 minutes. I might put in the comments later after the show where the time stamp is that it starts and finishes, because in many ways that, this conversation's great, I'm loving it, but if you want the concise view of what I think I said it pretty accurately there in that 8 minutes. And Mountain Viewer says, we are saying to you that we don't talk about it because you keep harping on it, Peter. Oh, a little bit of an attack there, Mountain View. I thought you were being nice to me. We are saying to you that we don't talk about it because you keep harping on it, Peter. But there is definite change happening over the past few decades. Okay, well, I'm saying that after being a fifth generation Adventist, doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs over a 30-year period, and not seeing any change as the power of Ted Wilson over 3 terms, the booing of Jan Paulson, the tightening of the Concerned Brethren's claims and doctrines with Erton Kohler, and 500 interviews in 5 years tells a different story to me. So I'm not harping on about it. Let's say, for example, in the music world, there are people who are constantly harping on about copyright and people abusing that. And the nature of the music industry is that people will push those boundaries, and they need people that are willing to be a lighthouse shining a spotlight on that coastline. You never go, oh, the job's done, turn off the light. The SDAQ&A lighthouse can stop harping on about it. We don't need a light on those rocks anymore. Because we do. They are still there. So I will continue to harp on about it. I'd love you on the show, Mountain Viewer. But I doubt you will come on the show, because you know that the change isn't happening. And I would love for you to point to where it is changing and answer a few questions that I'd love to ask you. So yeah, stop with the ad hominem harping on about it. You've just revealed your cards, Mountain View. Andy writes, it is in the 28 Fundamentals, the IJ. Why are they not talking about it? True, it is definitely in there. But it is watered down. It's a watered down version. Where is this? Here it is, Fundamental Belief 18. The original wording, which described her writing as a continuing and authoritative source of truth, was changed to her writings speak with prophetic authority. But in 2015, so only 11 years ago, the GC reaffirms Ellen White's authority. And watch this, Mountain View. Rather than replacing the Bible, they uplift Scripture and correct incorrect interpretations of it. You know, these incorrect interpretations derive from tradition, human reason, personal experience, and modern culture. So these decades of changing, nope, it's not changing. That's why I left Mountain View, because I realized that it is not changing. Cindy Lou writes, remove the E.G. White stool leg and you will slide onto your bum. And Mountain View writes, trauma happened to us older SDAs, but not my daughter's generation. That's because she received the watered down version of Adventism. And great. My daughter goes to an Adventist school. I hope, that she isn't too traumatized by it. But my other daughter, who's 12, so they're 12 and 13, one goes to Adventist school, the other one doesn't. I never have to have any debriefing with her. She's homeschooled, wonderful homeschool plan for years with Montessori. But occasionally I have to have a little debrief with my 13-year-old and say, well, look, So look, it's just not true, Mountain View. great that your daughter has missed it. She's 34. Could she come on the show and share her experience? I would love to chat with her. I spent 30 years to people like her and the younger generation, encouraging people to stay in the church, to focus on Jesus, to make it about the Bible. I never preached Ellen White at all. I never talked about the IJ at all. So I contributed to that kind of success of carrying on the light of Des Ford and others, where assurance of salvation was right at the heart of the gospel. And I feel like I've done a bit of a disservice because I created a false sense of security. Because, as you said, your brother is a very ultra conservative CB and they are winning again. They are winning again. So maybe your daughter's children won't be as lucky. But I'm so glad that she didn't have that kind of trauma that you had. But the point is, and maybe you missed that 8 minutes I did. In the comments later, come back and check. I will put the timeline on YouTube of where that 8 minutes is, because I think I clarify some of my thoughts there that I'd love you to comment on. And Jane, yes, Jane, if you can get to watch that 8 minutes as well, because I do mention this. Progressive SDAs are great at slightly changing words, so it sounds progressive but isn't. Yeah. IJ, aka Sanctuary, same chicanery, yes. And Andy agrees with Jane. Yep, Adventism is Adventism. And that's what I was saying before. Liberal Advent, any kind of Adventism. If you're an Adventist, your name's on the rolls, and you are claiming to be a Seventh-day Adventist, no matter what kind you are, by having your name on the books, you are aligning to a brand that may or may not teach things that you agree with, but you are aligning to a brand that is actually not following the biblical gospel. A bit of a claim there for me to say, because I'm not actually making any claims myself, but I'm observing. And when I observe the Christian Bible gospel teaching, and I look at the three angels' everlasting gospel, they aren't the same. They're not the same. The message the world needs, with or without religion, is that the unconditional love of God casts out fear. Thank you, Terence. Agreed. Cindy says, Mountain View, how can one be SDA without E.G. White? The threads of SDAism get all intertwined and tangled in the brain like funky tentacles. Jude says, love your way of explaining it. Rochelle says, SDAs conflate sign and seal, and even though they're two completely different ideas from completely different contexts and completely different parts of Scripture. Cindy Lou writes, progressives have left their collective doors open enough to allow the possibility of the Ellenisms to seep back in. Yes, true. When SDAs returns to its anti-Trinity beliefs, then I will return to SDA. Oh, there we go. Louis Therese, yeah, that's who I was talking about before. Very much a legalist, and was the guy who got David Asherek speaking out there. He loved David Asherek's message and got behind him 100%, and very much a legalist. I met him and toured with him for a week. Not playing music, loaning him my guitar amplifier, my Jazz Chorus 120. And I said, I'm happy to loan it to you for a week. This was when I lived in New Zealand. And I said, do you mind if I come along to all the gigs and I'll set up the stage for you? His wife played beautiful violin and he played beautiful guitar through my amplifier. We chatted a lot that week and I liked him a lot, but it became very clear to me that he was fully a concerned brethren. I'm bringing that back in. Are you a concerned brethren or a Fordite? And Mountain View goes, I don't know about David Ashrek, but Ty is far, far, far from CBs. My CB brother and his like can't. Yeah, they've gone off big time. They've gone off Ty and David and Arise and Light Bearers. The CBs have gone off those guys because those guys appear to be, supporting women's ordination. There's a lot of things that they've rebranded, but their underlying doctrinal theology is very, very similar to traditional and original Adventism. And look, Mountain View, and who are you, by the way? I've never seen this name in chat before. All of a sudden you're calling me harping on, and someone this morning said I was barking up the tree all the right. Is it you? Is it the same person? I think it is. Your daughter would be about 34. So I would love, Ty, obviously. I'd love him on the show. Honestly, I like the guy. I like people. I don't have to agree with them. And Andy writes, I can't agree. Rebranding a cult still wreaks havoc on the psychology of the young, perpetuating what happened. Oh, exactly. Yes. I'm not saying, it's funny when I say things like, good on them, they can do what they want, rebrand it if they want, but they're really just still traditional Adventist rebranding. Yeah, go for it. But I don't agree with their rebranding version. In fact, I think it actually brings about quite a lot more psychological damage to young people because they fall for Adventism all over again. At least with your Dennis Preebies and your Mark Finley's, at least with those guys and Ted Wilson, they're very clear about it. So you can go, oh, I'm not going to go for that one. But your Ty Gibsons and your David Ashreks are rebranding Adventism. And I think that it's a little bit diversionary. But yes, you are right, Andy. It is still a dangerous. Anything that promotes Adventism is dangerous for mental health. Anything that promotes Adventism that in some way encourages people to embrace Adventism of any kind is dangerous. Rochelle says, I lost all respect for Doug Batchelor as a pastor when he gave that sermon claiming, yes, I believe Jesus was a Seventh-day Adventist. Woefully, historically inaccurate. Yeah, so that was a funny one, that one. Well, we will wrap it up soon. Just having a quick, that's right, high demand religion. That's what Adventism is. And Rose says, having nothing to do, the devil finds works for idle hands. To what are you referring, Rose? Are you suggesting that I have idle hands? Or are you... I don't know what you mean. So, when Andy says, when they stop calling me a Sunday keeper, I will stop calling them a cult. See how lately they're shifting the Sunday law, Sunday keeping. They're trying to water that one down too. And Mountain View writes, yeah, gospel Adventists need a charismatic leader to unite them into a new, strong... Oh, we agree on that one. They do. And when you find one, ask them to come on the show. And we'll see how willing they are. Now, just so you know, a former GC, General Conference, top-level Adventist, I had lunch with, and he told me, and he would be an incredibly charismatic leader. He would be the perfect guy. Ran into him the other day, but a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago even, he said to me that he loves the show, still watches it regularly, as he told me the other night. But back then, he was saying that he and others were moving in that direction to create something that was a networked, independent ministry. Crickets. Hasn't happened. If you're watching, contact. I'll never release your name. You asked me to keep that quiet. I don't change my mind if I've promised someone I'll keep their name out of it based on whether they've changed or not. John adds Bill Liversidge, Jack Sequira. They also brought in the gospel. Yeah, they tried. Mountain View says yes. Bill Liversidge, Jack Sequira taught strong gospel messages. Jack spoke at many large camp meetings in the 90s. Still haven't got a foothold. Still don't have an influence. Light Bearers influences. Mountain View, Light Bearers does not preach the same gospel that Bill, Des, Jack spoke. It's not the same. Thank you, Jude. Everyone keep that, clicking that like button for me. It really, really helps. Okay, lots of fantastic comments. And Mountain View says, yes, some E.G. White writings brought a lot of trauma to people and still do. I'm glad your daughter avoided it, and I hope her children don't fall into the loving arms of the Great Controversy book, which the church promotes as its number one source material for finding out the plan of salvation. And Brian writes, Mountain View, but if we disagree on interpretation, we must use the lesser light to point back to the greater light, and round and round and around we go. Very true, Fred. Ellen said she beheld God. But Scripture says no one can see God or they will die. Christ even warned of false prophets. And Mountain View agrees with Brian, best to stick to the Bible only. All we need. And that said like a true progressive, Mountain View. Said like a true progressive. Let's just stick to the Bible. We won't jettison publicly any of the teachings of Adventism. We're just going to stick to the Bible and hope it makes a difference in our behind-the-scenes closed Sabbath school doors. Oh, Dexter, I hope I didn't say manifesto. I'm sure I didn't. No way. No way would I make a manifesto. I have said that the progressives, if they followed the Des Ford October 27, 1979 forum message and this book, and there's another thing too, that they would have, I can't remember what the other one was. There's 3 things that I'm going to do a show, the Progressive Adventist Manifesto. That 1-hour talk of Des's, this book, and the third thing will come back to me. I will never make a manifesto. I can promise you that. I'm not making any belief claims. Let's find common ground, have great conversations, enjoy a nice hot drink over lunch at a cafe. But use your own brain, please. And if you think the Bible alone, then leave Adventism, because Adventism is not the Bible alone. And if you stay, admit you're staying because you're a cultural Adventist, and that's right. Or you're a leader and you're getting a paycheck. Listening here says, keep harping on, Peter. Yes, the lighthouse must continue to shine. The rocks have not disappeared. And next writes, angels play harps. Andy says, we're here to harp. Yeah, Ellen is the magisterium of Adventism. That's good. Sell those books, E.G. White Estate says. Sell those books. They must make a squillion from those books. Oh, dear. How old is Mountain View's daughter? 34, she said. Because she is deluded if she thinks trauma doesn't happen. Yeah, it still happens. I remember when we were told not to wear jeans to camp. Yes, all those standards come into it as well. The E.G. White Estate is a top breadwinner for the church. It's a gift that keeps on giving. Yeah, this is a good one. E.G. White is judge and jury all in her own head. And we're thinking of you, Jane, as well. Jane's just mentioned about some scary health issues she's going through. You're a valued member, and we're really thinking of you. And yeah, take it easy. Fred writes, Adventism infects the brain like worms. And adds, Jane, you are a blessing. Yes, it's good to mention Tess the Prophet here, who sadly passed away at, I think, around 40 years old recently. And I encourage people to go and check out his channel. Honestly, progressive Adventists, do yourself a favour. If you call yourself a Galatians Adventist, go and go and watch the 6 episodes of Test the Prophet. It's like the old saying, if something looks so pretty and spectacular in a package, but when you open that package and really do your logical sense, take heed of Test the Prophet. Do your homework. Yeah. You're spicy today, Fred. The Bible and Bible alone, because Ellen White said. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, isn't it? Progressive Adventists often say to me, oh, well, Ellen White said the Bible and the Bible alone. As long as you draw the same conclusions she did, the Bible alone points to what I'm saying as being true. Look at it. The Bible there, clear, plain, simple language, confirms what I'm saying. Go and check it out. Check out the Bible alone, and the Bible alone will confirm my teachings. Oh, dear. Well, thank you, everybody, for your time today. And as I said in the chat after the program, I'll try and pin it to the top, the time code of where my little 8 minutes was, so that you can see where I'm headed in a more concise way. And, I've still got lots to learn. I encourage my progressive, gospel, Galatian, SDAs, liberal, whatever you like to call yourselves, that see yourselves as being different to the traditional Adventist view. You're not CBs. We're not CBs. I encourage those of you to come on my program here, and let's talk about where your beliefs differ. And sadly, I know you won't. You're all of a sudden too busy. Oh, I'm too busy to do that. But the reality is you know, you're too scared to share your gospel message, and you know that when you do, it will be pulled apart and will be revealed as being something totally different to traditional Adventism. And your claim that you can be any kind of Adventist you want will be revealed that, yes, you can, until you tell the church what those diverse beliefs are. And you will feel the ramification of it. Another friend working in Australia at a high level in the SPD, when he shared to me his belief of the IJ and assurance of salvation, I said, "It's a beauty. It's great. Come on the show." And he smiled because he knows my tongue-in-cheek sort of play with some of the words. And he said, "Oh, I couldn't do that. I would lose my job." So there you go, progressives. Bit of a challenge there for you today, but I'm not attacking. Let's just talk about it because I think it is important. And I do believe that Adventism is different to your normal Protestant movement, and that its teachings can cause harm, even if they're not being spoken of in church. Even if you manage to bypass them, you will find upon closer inspection that they have caused you great harm. And look, lots of things do in life, don't they? Lots of things cause us harm. I'm not saying it's the only harm-causing movement, but it's the storm in a teacup that I grew up in. It's the one I know the best. And so that's what I will speak about and continue to harp on about it. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time as today's program, and where I will be chatting with Gillian Ford. I can't wait. Well, I always enjoy chatting with Gillian. And her and Des Ford, wow, what an incredible legacy, incredible contribution they made to the planet by offering people assurance of salvation. Until next time, take care.